Should I start? A very good afternoon to all our listeners, and welcome to the 13th episode of VPod, brought to you by the business cluster of IIM Visakhapatnam. In today's episode, we have with us Dr. Angshuman Ghosh, who is a data science and strategy executive with over a decade of experience in the tech, media, and retail industries. Sir is currently the head of data science at Sony and a Forbes Technology Council official member and contributor. Previously, he held positions with Disney, Target, Wipro, Grab, and Spice, and is also a visiting professor at prestigious IITs, IIMs, and IICs, among others. He holds a PhD and MBA from XLRI, as well as a computer engineering degree. He received the LinkedIn Spotlight 2019 award for being one of the most inspiring and engaging leaders on the platform. A very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Akshita, Vijay, and the team at IIM Vizag. It's a great honor and privilege for me to participate in this podcast with you. I visited your campus a couple of years back. It's a very beautiful campus. But yeah, now due to online, we're having this virtual session, but I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So, sir, looking at your academic excellence, a man of your caliber could have chosen any career to pursue. But what attracted you to pursue data science as a career when it was at its nascent stage?
Okay, so I would share my experiences, but in addition, I would probably try to use one framework so that it helps the students and others to also do their career planning in a more systematic way. So this framework something I developed long time back, and what I call it is a PCO model of career. So what is PCO? The first is P. P means passion, right? So there are things you are really passionate about, right? So for me, I'm generally, I love maths, numbers, and computer science. I've studied all those things and I really love them, right? So definitely I had the passion for this field: statistics, mathematics, computer programming, the core areas which are part of data science. Second is in PCOC, which is capability, right? So you may have passion for some field, but you need to also have the required skills and the competency so that you do well, right? So throughout my life, be it in terms of my education, in terms of computer science, management education, and PhD, I could capture some of the skills in terms of the theoretical knowledge. But over the years of working experience, I also gained the practical experience, business knowledge, etc. So that is the competency of C part. But those two are not enough if you are trying to pursue a successful career, because third thing is equally or probably more important, which is O, or opportunity, right? So you may have a passion, you may have competency, but there may be certain very good opportunities in a particular industry or field. So I probably had the passion and competency already, but data science as a field emerged probably 7-8 years back in India, and probably few years before that in United States and elsewhere in the world. So I saw this opportunity. It was a new field at that point of time. Nobody studied data science. I don't think any IIT or MBA colleges offered courses on data science. But as a field, it was growing. There was jobs being created, and I thought for the future it's a very good opportunity. Of course, at that point of time, there was also certain amount of risk, because you don't know. Of course, looking back, 7 years, I can say yes, I made the transition and it was a good decision. But that time I took a little bit of risk also. So I would say I used my passion, capability, and opportunity to find a field which suits my interest, as well as a good career overall in terms of salary, career growth, interesting one. So that's how it happened. I would say some part was planned, some part happened. Luck also probably played a role. So that's how it has happened for me.
This PCU model, it is really insightful, sir. Now, what according to you are some critical technical skills which everyone should possess, irrespective of their domain?
Especially for data science, I think some of it I touched upon, but I'll probably put it together in a more concise format so that people who are interested can follow very easily. So I would say there are three critical skills or areas which everyone who is interested in a career in data science must have. First and most important is mathematics and statistics, because that forms the foundation of data science. So whether you are doing a small data analysis on Excel, or you are doing a big data analysis on Hadoop or AWS, your math and stat skills are always very much needed, right? So mathematics and statistics form the foundation. And within mathematics and statistics, there are a few areas which are extremely important, and those are descriptive statistics, inferential statistics, linear algebra, where you work with metrics, etc., and calculus, a bit of it, especially the derivatives, where you're optimizing functions, etc. So these are some areas of mathematics and statistics. In addition to that, you also need some computer programming knowledge. And if those of you who are new to it, I would recommend at least one programming language you must learn, and maybe you can work with Python or you can learn Python. Another language is also there, R, but if you have to learn one, I will probably pick Python. And in addition to that, you should have some knowledge of SQL or structured query language, which is very required to gather data, do some processing, create data pipeline, etc. So you may not need to be expert of them, but at least some understanding of Python and SQL are very much important. And third is the domain knowledge, because you will be working in a marketing problem, HR problem, maybe in a retail industry or in a tech industry. So if you don't know your industry, if you don't know your business problem well, and if you can't identify out of thousands of data points or hundreds of variables which are important, which are not important, when how do you know data is of good quality or not? So for all of that, you need to have some domain or business knowledge. And I think as MBA students, I am Vizag, and other MBA college students will probably have an upper hand in terms of business and domain knowledge. So these three are the core or most important skills which are must for any data science professional.
So, sir, we know how crucial number crunching is in the field of data science, but how important do you think is the art of storytelling?
Okay, that's a very good question. I'm happy that you asked me. So, in the last question, we discussed about some of the core skills, which are mathematics, statistics, computer programming, and business or domain knowledge. But there are a couple of more skills which become extremely important, especially when you are working in the corporate environment. And among those skills, some of the soft skills, especially communication and storytelling, becomes extremely important. Why so? Because as a data science professional, you'll be working with multiple types of people. So you have to work with the business people to understand the business problem and finally communicate your results to them, right? So that is one type of stakeholder. You may need to work with statistician to build the model. You may also work with the research scientist who will create probably state of the art models, etc. You will also work with the computer engineers or data engineer or software engineer who will do the engineering part of the problem, right? And all these different stakeholders will understand a very different language. Probably the business person is only concerned with the profit or the revenue. The research scientist or statistician wants to create a very fancy new model. Engineering person, he wants to build the right data pipeline, implement in production, those kind of things. So you have to understand their world, their language, how they communicate, right? And hence communication becomes a very important role, especially in data scientist role where you're working with all different people, but also when you're working in a management role, right? So for example, I'm working as the head of data science for Sony for the R&D division in India. So I have to work with the business people, the research scientists, the data engineers, multiple type of people, right? And hence communication becomes very important, and storytelling becomes more important when you are communicating the final result to the stakeholder, especially the management or the business stakeholder. As I mentioned earlier, I'll repeat that point because that's very important. That as a business stakeholder, they want to understand the overall story. They want to understand about the impact. They want to understand the ROI, return on investment. They want to understand how their sales or profit will get impacted or grow because of your model, not just the model that you have created, right? Hence, storytelling and influencing the stakeholder becomes very important. But I'd like to add one more skill along with the communication and storytelling in terms of soft skill in data science, and that is problem solving. So many a times the work that you are doing, it is not a pure research work. Of course, if you are working in academics or doing your PhD, you can just focus on your research, make some publication. That's it, right? It doesn't have to always solve a problem, right? You can decide to solve a real world problem. You can work on some abstract problem as well. But in the business world or in industry, when you are working, ultimately you are getting paid to solve a problem, to increase the revenue, decrease the cost, improve the profit. There is some problem with sales or promotion or marketing, whatever. So you are there to solve a problem, and hence problem solving abilities also become very, very critical.
Exactly, sir. And as it is said that storytelling is the most powerful way to put ideas into the world. So the
Absolutely.
importance is highlighted. Yeah. So, what all career options does the domain of data science offers?
So data science offer a lot of different career options, and most popular role, of course, is the data scientist role. And this role has emerged kind of a full stack person, right? So when somebody is recruiting, they expect the person to know almost everything from business to computer science to big data to statistics to machine learning, deep learning. So whenever they are recruiting, they want all the skills together. Hence, sometimes it may become little overwhelming, but at the same time the roles are very lucrative and career growth is very good. But that's not the only role in the data science world. There are a lot of other roles, and I'll probably highlight 3 4 more other roles as well. So one of the roles will be very suitable for the management students, and which is business analyst role. Now, business analyst is the person who works closely with the business. They have good domain or business understanding. They understand the business problem. They may work together with the data analyst or the data scientist to gather the data, create the model, but finally also create a presentation in the form of PowerPoint or a Tableau dashboard or something like that, and present the key insight or the solution or the final recommendation to the business stakeholder. So here, as you can understand, the business or domain understanding becomes more important than probably the modeling or some SQL kind of skills. So I think for business people or MBA students, this can be a very good role. A lot of companies offer this kind of role. Different banks offer this kind of role. Even consulting companies offer very similar role. Of course, they may call you an analyst or a consultant, but fundamental part of the job may be understanding a business problem, gathering some data, doing some research, and finally solving the problem. So broadly, I'll classify under business analyst role. Other than that, there is one more role which I just mentioned is the data analyst. So data analyst may have less understanding of the business, but more heavier understanding on the data side, especially database, SQL query, how to gather the data, right? So they may work with some cloud services, databases to gather the data and do the heavy data crunching work. And most of the time, they may work together with a data scientist or a business analyst. So for engineering students, MTech students, those who have good understanding of computer science, databases and all, a data analyst role may be very, very suitable. And there is
So,
another last role that I wanted to mention, which is coming up nowadays, especially when we get into the big data world. So, as you understand, the size of the data that we are dealing with is increasing a lot every day, right? So, most of the companies that I have worked in last 5 7 years, say for Disney, we have a platform called Hotstar in India, which has more than probably 2 300 millions of users. I work for Target, which had 200 million plus users. My last company was Grab, which also has 100 to 200 million users. And again, at Sony, I'm working with Sony Pictures Entertainment, and Sony Live platform itself has more than 100 million users. So once you have data for millions, hundreds of millions of users, and you are capturing many different data points, the size of data can be huge in terabytes, in petabytes, or even more. So to deal with that, a data scientist may be able to create a prototype model, but may not scale it up to that level. They may scale it up, but when you try to run the model every day or every hour, or you want to continuously keep running it and implementing in production, you need some heavy engineering work as well. And that is when data engineer or machine learning engineer is one more role which is emerging and which has become pretty big now. And I think this role will have as good as opportunity as the data scientist role, or probably even better in terms of the career growth, in terms of salary, etc. And I think those who are interested in the engineering side of things, data engineer and ML engineer can be a very good career opportunity. Over to you, Akshita.
so, sir, like as you have highlighted that there is a wide variety of jobs available in data science, and we see a sudden surge in the interest towards data science jobs nowadays. So people would love to know from you that what does a data scientist typical day look like?
Okay, I think as far as my experience has been, there has not been a typical day, and that is something I really love about this job. So I'll just give you my kind example. Of course, I'm currently working in a leadership role, but I've worked in a as a hands-on data scientist as well. But in both the cases, most of the time, someday you are just working with the business to understand the problem. So in case of Target, we wanted to work on some forecasting problem. In case of Grab, we wanted to understand customer behavior, customer churn. In Sony, we are building some recommendation system. All these are fundamentally some business problem that we are trying to solve, right? So initial part, I may be, or data scientist may be discussing with the business stakeholder to understand the problem, what are the variables, what is the input variable, output variable, how things work in this industry or the domain, right? So sometimes you'll be working with the business stakeholder. Sometimes you have to work with the engineering people because you want to get the data, right? So where is the table, what is the database, what is the name of the field? So that becomes a very engineering kind of discussion or work. And then once the data is ready, you may be doing some modeling, right? So you may work with a statistician, you may be building a machine learning or deep learning model. That's a very different kind of day, right? So all these will be very different days, and finally when you have created your model, you make a presentation, you present to business stakeholder, and as you mentioned, their storytelling communication becomes very important. So especially for me, the way it has been, and I think maybe for most of the data scientists it will be similar. You may be working with the business people someday, understanding the problem, someday just gathering the data. Some days maybe a little boring when you're just cleaning the data, preparing the data, and I want to mention it at this point that many a times actual model building work may take just 20-30% of your time, but understanding the problem, gathering the data, cleaning the data may actually end up taking 60-70% of your time depending on actual problem and the data, right? So I'll conclude by saying the same thing that I started this answer with, that there is no typical day for a data scientist. Depending on what part of the problem you are solving, your work will vary. So those who like working on very different kind of work on different days, I think you'll find it pretty interesting and exciting.
So, data science as a field is igniting more curiosity in today's generation. But what, according to you, are a few misconceptions that exist?
I think not few, there are a lot of misconceptions, right? So few I'll discuss from probably the industry side, and at the end few from the also candidate or job seeker point of view, right? So from the industry side, right? So people still don't understand data science very well, because as you understand, this field has become big in last 5, 7, 10 years, right? But there are a lot of people who are there in the industry for 20, 30 years, and they may not have a full understanding, right? But these things are getting covered so much in the media. We are talking about AI, artificial intelligence, self-driving car, robots, etc. So there's a lot of hype going on, right? And that one good thing is that this field is growing because of that as well, but it creates many a time unrealistic expectation. So many a times I have seen in companies that people hire one data scientist and they expect magic to happen overnight, right? They feel that, okay, this data scientist has come and he's a rock star and superstar, and he'll just go and solve all the problem overnight, right? That doesn't happen. And some of the problem, why it doesn't happen is because people think just the model or the data scientist as a person can solve a big problem. That's not the case, right? Data science, the first word there is the data, right? You can do the science part of it or modeling part of it, but without the good quality data, you can do no data science, right? Doesn't matter, you may have a PhD degree, you may have a lot of experience, but without good quality data you cannot do anything. Second thing is that many a times data culture is also lacking. Many a times people love taking decision based on the hierarchy or based on judgment or other factor or based on emotions. Many of us are not designed to take decisions based on data, and that kind of culture may not be very suitable for data science. So those are some of the things from the corporate side of it, and I've seen having the right data, having the right culture, and having the right kind of expectation are very very important, which may be missing. From the candidate perspective also, I think there are a lot of little bit misconception. Means a lot of people want to get into data science thinking, oh, this is a good career field, there is a lot of money, so let me do a certificate or do a online course, and I'll become a data scientist and earn crores of rupees, right? But that may not happen, right? So this field is very challenging and it's changing very fast. right? And it has also become very competitive because everybody wants to get into the field, right? So those of you who are interested in the field, do it because you are passionate, do it because you have the capability, and do it for the long term, not because this is a hot thing now and I want to get a job, right? Because why I'm saying so, because the field changes very fast. 10 years back people use things like SPS and SAS, right? You asked me one question about tools, so if I had to answer that question 10 years back, I'll say somebody, okay, learn Excel or learn SPSS or SAS, right? If I answered the question 7 years back, I would probably say people to learn, R. Now I'm telling to learn Python. Tomorrow it may be Julia. Then, we may have auto ML code or something like that. So the field is changing, the technology part of it. At some point of time, Hadoop was a big thing. Then people started using Spark. Now people have moved to, Azure or AWS, right? So a lot of changes are happening. So if you are really interested, if you find that exciting, if you keep learning, it is a definitely great career. But don't think it will be very easy. Don't go for it just for the money or a particular job, right? And along with that, I wanted to mention, we discuss about a lot of skills. I'll just repeat that part that I mentioned. Three core skills are maths and stats, computer science, and domain of business knowledge. We added two additional skills to that, that is communication and then problem solving. And as per this particular question, I wanted to add one sixth skill, which is extremely important for those of you interested in data science, which is continuous learning, right? So in today's world, there is no limit to what you can learn. There are these podcasts that you are doing and many other people are doing. There are YouTube videos, there are online courses on Coursera, edX, there are online competitions on Kaggle, Analytics Vidya, etc. There is no limit to what you can learn. But if you want to be in this field, you have to keep learning, you have to keep upgrading yourself. If that is something you can do, I can assure that it will be a great career for you.
That was quite insightful, sir. So, we are almost at the end of this podcast. But before that, any final piece of advice you have for students before they enter into the corporate world?
Okay, so I think generally about data science we have discussed a lot, but since this question is a little broad, I'd probably add few more things. That especially when you have worked in academics or you have studied and then you are moving to corporate, it is not the same kind of world, right? So in an exam, right, in if you're a student in a school or college, if you give the right answer, right, you will probably get a good marks, right? We have some sense of fairness. Still many people may feel that it is not fair, I should have gotten more marks, right? But still I would say, looking back, it was a very fair world where you are judged based on your performance, your capability, your answers. When you get into corporate, there will be a lot of things which are not probably so fair, right? Things will get judgmental. There will be things like politics, there will be things like other things, right? Once you join corporate, you'll probably understand better. But be prepared for a more tough and sometimes unfair world, right? Focus on your work and your growth and whatever, but don't always expect fair treatment from everybody around you, right? So that is one thing I want to mention. Second important thing that you should know, that a lot of times we have very good theoretical knowledge, right? So when I did my management coursework or PhD, I understood the theory part of things very well, be it marketing, strategy, whatever. But when I worked in corporate, I saw that theory doesn't always work in the practice, and same applies to the data science field as well, right? So you'll learn, okay, if this is the problem, run this model, you get certain results, right? But those textbook solution most of the time will not work in the real world, right? So you get the data, you try to learn your model, you see that, oh, it's not working, right? Or you don't even have the data that is required to run the model. So that is when your creativity, your flexibility, your innovation, how you deal with ambiguous situation, those things will become more important than just following the textbook solution and implementing them. So that is my second advice, that be more practical oriented, focus on adding value to the business. Yes, theory is important, but how do you solve the problem in the practical situation will ultimately decide how well you do in the corporate setup. And last point I would probably repeat, because that is very important. I have repeat mentioned about it in detail in the last question. And doesn't matter you are in data science or any other field, today's world is changing very fast. Not just data science. If you think of, say, marketing world, right? So we had things like newspaper ads, TV ad. Now we have moved to digital performance marketing. These are very different from traditional TV or radio or newspaper ads. So digital transformation is happening across the industries and across the fields. So I think in general, please keep learning, adapt to the new tools and technologies, and continuous learning is definitely the way to go.
Thank you, sir, for your words of wisdom. I'm sure our listeners will learn a great deal from this interaction, as have I. On this note, I would like to conclude the 13th episode of our podcast series. Once again, on behalf of IIM Visakhapatnam, I would like to thank you for taking out your valuable time and addressing our enthusiastic student cohort. Thank you to all our listeners and have a great time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Akshita, Vijay, Kshitij, Ashish, and entire IIM Vizag team. I wish all the students of IIM Vizag and all our audience, a great learning, and I wish you all the best for a great career. Thank you. Take care. Bye. And just last point, probably, I think some of you may be also interested in different resources on data science, etc. So I keep sharing a lot of resources on data science for free, be it Python, machine learning, computer programming, Tableau, etc. So of course, those who are interested, please feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. You will get a lot of good resources. Thank you. Take care. Bye.